Hello, welcome to our Sunday live chat. And this week we are doing LGBTQ plus themes in YA. And I know that I'm super excited for this chat. And I know the other word nerds are super excited for this chat. So we're going to start with a question to just kind of get into it. So my question for you guys is, what is your favorite YA book with LGBTQ plus themes in it and why? And we're going to start with Emma.
Oh, sorry, what was the question? Sorry. I'm like doing Twitter and handling comments.
Favorite LGBT book.
Favorite LGBT book. Book about LGBT themes or book
Or
that
involved.
happens to have a character who is LGBT?
Either or.
Either or. Because I feel like this is a really easy answer because my favorite LGBTQ plus character is Ronan from the Raven Boys. Great.
Nice.
Wow, spoiler.
Good choice.
Oops.
Yeah, spoiler.
It's spoiler alert for the second book. But I love him. And I love his whole storyline.
Yes.
All right. Next is Rachel.
Okay. Hello, everyone. As you can see, I am once again homeless, but I swear this is last week. And I have maybe two that I'm not sure if I could choose between. One of them would be Noah from I'll Give You the Sun, because I really like his really sweet relationship with the boy next door. And then also I just finished reading We Are the Ants, which was phenomenal, which I will probably get into later, mostly because the main character, it's really not a book about a gay protagonist, it's just the protagonist happens to be gay, and I really enjoyed that, where it wasn't so much the focus of the book, but it really added to the plot line.
Mm-hmm. All right, next is Erin.
Yeah. So I just finished reading Exit Pursued by a Bear, which Emma had originally suggested as she just read it. It was really good. And like the title really was what drew me in. Hermione's best friend Polly is with her through this whole book and her whole ordeal and like everything, and then she like, okay, spoiler alert, but
yeah,
she
finds out that spoiler
it is a bigger spoiler, but so if you want to read The Exit Pursued by a Bear and be surprised about the love stuff in it, then mute me. But I really loved that Polly was ended up being a lesbian and ended up falling for Amy at this like cheerleading camp, and like it wasn't expected, and like everyone was like, Hermione was like surprised, but then they still had sleepovers and like no one was really weird about it, and I don't know, I just loved all the characters together, and I'm just like, I just want you to love each other, all each other, and just have sleepovers forever.
Her coming out was like really well handled. Like all of that was handled really well.
Yeah, and like it was on top of it already being such a shocking situation for Hermione that like her strong reaction was probably because like I didn't know that, and like there's all this other stuff I'm going through, and then after she had her like she runs into the bathroom and pukes because like her system's already in shock because she's had this like really Excerpt Pursued by a Bear is about a girl who's drugged and raped at cheerleading camp. And so she's already under like all this stress and shock, and then it comes out that her friend is started dating her other friend, basically. So she just out of sheer shock has this volatile reaction, and then once that's over, she's like, you know that's not a reaction to you, right? That's just like me being insane. And then they just basically carry on with their friendship, which I really like.
That's nice.
Mm-hmm. That sounds like an interesting book.
It's such a good book. I read it in one day.
Oh,
really?
I listened to the audiobook and I really liked the audiobook.
Mm-hmm. I just couldn't put it down. I was a little more, I'm a very like revengey kind of person, so I wanted there to be more of that in the end, but I'm okay with how it ended.
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess I'm last, and my favorite, I have two kind of favorite LGBT books. One is fiction, one is nonfiction. The fiction one is Aristotle and Dante Discover the Secrets of the Universe, and I'm surprised that no one else said that, because that's like the go-to book, but
I have it, but I couldn't get it.
I know a lot of people that have like mixed feelings about it, but I love it. Like, I thought it was my favorite book for a really long time, and then I read
Really?
it all. But but for like the longest time, that was my favorite book. And then my favorite nonfiction LGBT book is called This Book Is Gay, and I cannot remember who it's by, but it's really, really awesome. It's the unofficial gay handbook, is what the foreword says.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
I'm really surprised no one said Simon versus the Homo sapiens agenda.
That's what
Oh,
I was
yeah,
gonna
that's a
mention.
really good
That.
one.
I know, I was like really close to saying that one, but I was like, Ronan.
I feel like I have that go-to. Like anyone who watches all our WordNerds is gonna be like, "Well, Erin's just gonna say this one," because I do love it so much, but it's what I always go back to. And I was also gonna say "Carry On," like because I love it when there's like a gay protagonist or like a gay like best friend or whatever, and it's in a fantasy book and it's not an issues book. Like I really like it when it's included. So like "Carry On" I liked, and then the Scorpion Rules. She's bisexual, and it's just like it's handled. And I really liked it because it's not like it doesn't become an issue. Like they just kind of do everything with whoever they want, or she does, and I don't know.
I also I'm listening to the audiobook of A Darker Shade of Magic by Victoria Schwab right now, and it's very just kind of like a very casual thing. It kind of mentions offhand that the prince is kind of like a player and he's like always got people coming back to his room, and it just mentions offhand that it's girls and boys, and it's not a big deal at all. Like it's just like an accepted like normal thing in their world, and I thought that was
what book is that?
A Darker Shade of Magic. Like it's just this little throwaway line, and I was
Just
like,
a line.
What?
Yeah.
Okay,
I was like, oh, that's cool.
seriously, I love that's one of my favorite books ever.
You didn't notice?
Now you're gonna be rereading.
It's like I think it's one of his guards that like the guard when he's like just thinking about something. I don't know. It's part of like an internal
Okay. Well, I can imagine he's doing that. So.
Yeah.
Also, the book you mentioned earlier, Desiree, This Book Is Gay, is by James Dawson.
Oh, okay,
In
yeah.
case
I have it
anyone's
upstairs
listening.
somewhere, but
Who wants to know?
it's a really good book, I promise. If you needed an official gay handbook, I suggest picking it up.
It's
So
very
another question that
bright.
I want, yeah,
Wait, can I put it in? Can I put it in a thing?
go ahead.
Because earlier we were saying stuff about Simon versus the Homo sapiens agenda, and Aristotle and Dante discovered the secrets of the universe. Originally, I was thinking about those, but then I'm kind of like, those are like just the go-to books, just because they are some of the only ones that have gay main characters, and it's about like that issue. But there are so many other ones that have side characters and main characters that aren't necessarily those ones, but those are always the ones that get the publicity. And there's some even that I haven't read, like Will Grayson by John Green, which is a huge one. And there's another one that's, I think it's called One Man Guy. And so every time someone's like, oh, I just want to read something about that has LGBT in it, no one ever really mentions those ones, which is I think why none of us really mention them, except for Desiree with her Aristotle and Dante. Which I have to say, it's okay. I will fight you on this one.
I liked Aristotle and Dante. I thought it was good writing. I kept expecting like something to happen. Like I was like, nothing's happening.
I can't read books like that.
That's most people's problems with it. Like, there's a lot of like this like lead up, and then it's like, oh, okay, at the end there's like no like big like
bad ever
happens. Like, oh, okay.
Like, kind of gets hit by. Doesn't one of them like get hit by a car or something? But
Yeah,
it's
he
like
gets hit by a car.
it's not even that bad of an injury. It's like, okay.
I can't, there's so many books like that I know are like that, and I had this discussion literally the other day with one of my coworkers when we were both down on the floor, like, looking at all the books, and a lot of them downstairs on the tables are literary books, and she's just like, oh yeah, I just, like, I read them for the writing, like, even if nothing happens, and the writing's really beautiful, that's why I read them, and I just can't do that. Like, it doesn't matter how beautiful the writing is, if the story doesn't pull me in, I'm done. I'll be like halfway through and like nothing has happened yet. I'm finished, and I think that's why I couldn't get into the one we were talking about. I can't English today, so but the one we were talking about, I couldn't get into it. I think 3 chapters in, and I'm like, this is boring.
Oh no!
Sorry.
I love that book. It's so good. I haven't read it in forever though.
Maybe I'll have to force myself to read it for you guys. And somebody else said, like, there's so many people that said it's so good, and try reading it again. So maybe I will.
Well, that's another thing where it's sometimes I'm not sure if the book is good because it's actually a good book, or it's good because it has a LGBT main character,
Right.
which comes up sometimes. And I'm like, because once you hear, oh, it's a book with an LGBT main character, you're like, oh my god, that sounds so great, even though you have no idea what it's about. So I think it's that kind of similar thing. I'm like, I'm not sure if I actually like it or I like it just because it's different.
Yeah. It'll be nice to one day, maybe, hopefully, in a great future, not have to get excited every time there's a character, because there will be so many of them, you know? Like, I think that's the sad thing, is there are so few that we just get excited about a book, knowing nothing about it other than the fact that there's an LGBT character.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to mention a book again because everyone that's watching this needs to read this, and it's We Are the Ants by Sean David Hutchinson. And I think I mentioned it in some video or other, but he does The 5 Stages of Andrew Brawley, which is another LGBT character book. But I really enjoyed it because my coworker also mentioned it and just said, like, oh, you should really read this. And there's an LGBT main character. And I went into it not knowing anything other than it was an LGBT main character. And it was a phenomenal book. And the whole, like, oh my god, if you want a lesson in character development, you read that book. It is amazing. And, like, the writing is so gorgeous. And there's a lot of really great portrayals of anxiety and depression and, like, wondering about your own life. There's, like, an alien abduction aspect to it. And, yeah, the main character just kind of happens to be gay. Like, it's not even really an issue in the book at all, which I really enjoyed. I also apologize for myself eating all throughout this video for the background noise, but it's better than listening to hardwood floors being put in for 3 hours. So.
One of the other questions that I had for you guys was, why do you think it's so important that we include, like, LGBT characters in books, and why it's, like, becoming a bigger thing now? Like, why do you think it's important? So we can start with Emma.
I mean, I think a big thing, there are so many reasons, like, including, like, just the fact that LGBTQ teens need to see themselves in books. Like, that's the biggest reason, is being able to see themselves in books. But I think also it's a lot of, like, being able to create empathy in other people, too. Like, there's so many issues in our society. I mean, right here, I live in Orlando, where, like, a bunch of gay and trans and bi people were all killed just because of who they were. And, like, the more people are just reading stories where it's a normal thing, the more empathy we gain for other people. So hopefully there will be less tragedies like that, less hate.
I agree. Rachel, you're next.
Oh, pretty much the same thing. But it is true that a lot of characters, and I'm not just in books, but in movies and other kinds of media, it is like the cis white person. So if I want to say diversity includes every kind of sexuality there is, because diversity can include race and ethnicity and religion and all that. So why shouldn't it include sexuality? Because just over the last, I won't even say 2 years or so, it's really become more of a thing to know multiple sexualities, experiment, and figure out who you are instead of having just to put yourself in a box. And there are so many now that I had no idea about before. And now that it's kind of becoming, quote-unquote, more popular to include this in media, I'm just so happy, because there's always going to be someone that's, I never see myself anywhere. And to be able to have these, and, like, one of my good friends, is gay, and he loves the fact that there are more LGBT main characters, because he's never been able to find something like that for himself before. Because usually when you read, you put yourself in the main character's shoes, and you can't do that all the time, but it's now becoming easier to. And there's just someone that just enjoys reading that. It's nice to see diversity instead of reading the same thing over and over again.
Erin, you're next.
Yeah, just what Rachel was saying about when you read, you're putting yourself in that character's headspace and in their shoes and experiencing things that they're experiencing. It almost feels like you are as well, and I think that's extremely important for, of course it's important for LGBT, see, I cannot English today. Of course it's important for people to be able to identify with characters and see themselves in these characters, which is why it's great that we don't just have these straight white people, but it's also important for straight white people to read these and walk a mile in someone else's shoes and realize that, that's why it's good to have issue books as well as books that are just, feature characters that are gay, because people should be reading widely and they should be reading both so they can emphasize, especially, starting young. Like, I would love to see more middle grade books, because that's when you first start forming opinions about things, and like, you see, bigoted people, and they didn't get that way out of nowhere. They're raised that way by their parents. They're raised that way because they haven't stepped out of their little box, and they haven't read those books. They haven't experienced other, lives through fiction. So,
Right.
that's why it's important to create empathy.
Yeah, well, now you can product plug because your own middle grade has an LGBT aspect to it.
Yeah.
There's also,
Shameless
speaking of middle
product plug for
grade,
someone else.
speaking of middle grade, I didn't mention this earlier when we were talking about books, but George by Alex Gino is good, because I don't think we've mentioned any trans characters yet. And George is a trans character, and it's like a middle grade book. George is in like 5th grade or something, I think. So it's definitely, hopefully there will be more things for younger kids.
Yeah, there is a book that I've heard of that I do want to read. It's called Some Assembly Required. And I know that has a trans main character. And that was actually something I wanted to bring up eventually. I know. That was something I wanted to bring up eventually where, oh my god, this is going to sound so bad. It seems that the main characters now of all LGBT are just gay characters, and that's kind of
it. Yeah, that's what I was going to bring that up too.
Yeah, where it's really like, if anyone says LGBT, it's always a gay character. That's it. And there's really nothing else.
Yeah. And it's usually a gay guy. There's less
gay guy. Well, that's kind of what I meant, was that I know there is a lot of not necessarily traditionally published fiction of lesbian relationships, but there's you have so many aspects of it. I did write some down, but like the only book that I've ever read that had a lesbian main character is called Beautiful Music for Ugly Children, and that is like that's it. I haven't seen anything else. I did see one that's about a genderqueer main character. There's one that's gender fluid. I've read one that is what's the word for when you have both sets of chromosomes?
Intersex?
Yes. Heard of that one. But that's kind of it, and I've only heard one of each kind. I've never heard about a pansexual character, or I think a couple of bisexual characters are like here and there in books, but there's
never asexual characters. I think that's one that's really erased.
There's never asexual characters ever.
I think someone mentioned it on Rachel's video.
Yeah, they did. I saw that.
Yeah, they were like, what about asexual characters? Like, there never are any.
There's
Ace
never
and Arrow.
Yeah. Because Ace and Arrow are the identities and orientations that are like erased the most in real life too.
That's very true.
Yeah, well, Deadpool's pansexual, so
yeah. I think we'll probably start seeing a lot more female characters, either bisexual or lesbian. Like, I feel like there's a lot of stuff. Like, there's A Fire and Stars by Audrey Coulthurst. I'm really excited for that because it's a fantasy. It's about like a princess. I think it's 2 princesses. I know at least one of them is a princess. But yeah, so it's like an adventure story, and there are 2 princesses that fall in love. I'm very excited. That's my fantasy.
Wait, what's it called again?
Of Fire and Stars.
Fire and Stars?
Is that by Neil Gaiman?
No, it's Audrey Coulthurst.
No.
It's a debut book.
Oh, because I know Neil Gaiman. I can't remember what he did. He did a retelling of
Spindle. It's a Spindle something. I don't remember. I know
a retelling of Sleeping Beauty, where the knight waking her up as a lady.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I can picture the cover.
Have you seen the graphic novel? Oh my goodness, it is the most gorgeous thing in the entire. Oh, The Spinner and the Sleeper. Sleeper and the Spindle?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, but A Fire and Stars comes out, I think, end of this year or early. I think it's end of this year. I know there's like arcs out right now.
Oh, rad.
And who's it by?
Audrey Coulthurst.
Coulthurst? That's a rad last name.
Like Coulthurst, I think.
There's
I actually had her for the Sip Swap like mug exchange around Christmas time, so that's how I discovered her. So yeah, her books are really good.
I googled it. I need to see it.
The series of graphic novels called Lumberjanes.
Oh yeah.
Which is something really people talk about a lot in my store. Apparently, there's gay and transsexual people in Lumberjanes, the series.
Oh, I did not know that. Good to know.
Mhm. I think it's quite a long series. Like issue 17 came out a while ago. Like there's a lot of them.
Wow.
Yeah. Everyone in my store keeps talking about it, so I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
I need
okay.
to,
I just know it's
buy
popular.
something
I
else
haven't known much about it.
because I don't buy enough books already.
Exactly.
Yeah, so Of Fire and Stars comes out in November. For anyone who's wondering.
But I'm excited for it now, like really excited.
And I know like Ashley Herring Blake, her debut book came out in April, I think, like end of April. And she has another, and that was just like a male-female romance, but her book next year is two girls, and I know at least one of them is bi. So I think there's people are starting to like write and get them published. So
that's great.
There's more girl stuff
That's good.
coming out. Which is good.
Well, I really would like to read a love triangle where one of them is bi.
Yeah.
Ooh, that'd be really interesting.
That would make things very interesting. Yes.
And you know what? Oh man, I'm going to admit this over the internet. So if any of the people are watching, it's going to be real awkward. But I just kind of got out of that myself.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
The love triangle with a bi person.
It was interesting.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I am now like creating
Very
fiction in my head, not about you because that would be weird, but like.
Well, you know,
but,
there's
like,
a ridiculous amount of gay fan fiction, so.
Yeah.
And
I feel like it's interesting that you bring up fan fiction because I think fan fiction is really where like gay YA stuff got its start.
What's it
like
called?
Slash, yeah, Slash.
Yeah. Which sounds.
Who used to be like writing and reading those fan fictions are now becoming like published authors. So we're actually getting books with gay characters.
One day that'll be me. 'Cause I read fan fiction all the time. I was literally reading fan fiction 5 minutes before the chat. Just saying.
I just like that because that's kind of how Carry On started. Like it was fan fiction within Rainbow Rowell's book,
Right.
and it became real.
It's so cool to actually read a whole extra novel based on
Yeah.
And plus, it's a fantastic book.
Oh yeah.
I loved it. I know
was
I had
so
mixed
great.
reviews, but the thing was I'm not a romance reader, which is so funny because I was only in that for the romance. Like the fantasy aspect of it was really meh, but I loved the romance.
Which
Well, I
book?
have a bunch of.
Carry On.
I like the book.
I
Like, I don't like this. It's too close to Harry Potter, and I'm like, I'm sorry. Have you read the other book? Do you know what this is about?
It's supposed to be.
Yeah.
You need to read the other book.
We do have a couple of
thing.
comments.
Okay.
I should have read these earlier when we were talking about favorite like books and characters because that's what they're about, but I'm slacking. But Leah said that her favorite is Simon versus the Homo sapiens agenda. She says Simon is such a relatable character and the narration is seriously spot on for high school students, which I agree with. And Gildarts said these books were a continuation of a series and they were comic books, but Buffy the Vampire Slayer with Willow and Tara, I know a lot of people like them. And I think that was like the first time that two women like had like a sex scene on TV or something, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it was like.
Yeah. And then he also said Dumbledore and Grindelwald in the Harry Potter series. Which I would love to have just like a book about them and their story.
Yeah.
And their
That'd be really interesting.
It's such a good book.
I also forgot to add one of my very favorite characters. It's not a main character, but Magnus Bane.
Yes.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Definitely.
I love him so much. He's one of my favorite characters. Like, everyone's always like, "Oh, who would you like if you could bring a character to life? Who would it be?" And everyone's like, "Oh, I like Jace. He's so hot," or whatever. And I'm like, "No, Magnus." I love him so much. And plus, him and Alex's relationship is just so wonderfully written throughout that whole thing. And I love Malik. It's great. Apparently, in the TV series, because I have not watched them, apparently in the TV series, it's the one thing that they do really well.
Oh, it's so good.
Yeah, okay.
It's so good. My favorite thing about the series was that the episode where they finally kiss and like Alec decides to like give up on following what his family wants him to do, the episode is literally titled Malik. Like they weren't even subtle about it. It's like the name of the episode. You're like, I know what's gonna happen.
Oh, that's fantastic.
That's great.
Their relationship is great in the show.
Woo.
I think something it's important to talk about, a little off topic with the shipping thing, but is actual LGBTQ people writing the fiction that is representing them, and like, because it's the same with culturally diverse writers. We are looking for more of those. We want to promote more of those people writing about their own cultures from their own point of view, and it's the same thing I think with this, and that we don't have enough, and that we need to search out more and promote those when we find them.
That's something I'm excited about with like the 2 books I mentioned earlier that aren't out yet. Like Of Fire and Stars, Audrey Colthurst, like she has a wife. She's lesbian. She could be bi, but I guess I'm making an assumption by lesbian. I know she said on Twitter that she's like never kissed a guy or anything. Like she's writing something with heterosexual characters right now, and she's like, I need advice on how het people kiss.
How does this work?
but yeah, so there's that, and then I also mentioned Ashley Herring Blake has a book about a bi character, and she's bi. So
Okay.
yeah, it's I think seconding what Erin said, it's really important to look for books that are by people who actually have the identity they're writing about.
Right.
Yeah, well, I know, I'm trying to look at the ones that I wrote down. I know that Sean David Hutchinson is gay himself, and I know Jeff Garvin, who does Symptoms of Being Human, which is a gender fluid being character. I know they are both gay.
Yeah.
But everyone else, I'm just looking here. Is David Levithan gay? Because he has a lot of...
Yes,
he is.
I know this because my boss teaches a class on YA fiction, and they had a whole discussion when they were talking about David Levithan books. Like one of them presented on they had to present on an author, and everyone was like, "Is he gay?" And everyone had to like search his website and all his quotes because everyone was trying to figure it out.
He writes the foreword for "This book is gay," and he's like confirms. He says that he's gay.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
It's another reason you should go read that book.
Will do. Well, because he does, this is another one that I wanted to like specifically talk about, was one of his books, because I know he does Two Boys Kissing, and he does like those kind of books. But then he also does, oh my god, Every Day, with the main character who is not really a person, which I thought was fantastic, because that is kind of, I suppose, pansexual, because
Or gender fluid too.
Gender fluid, maybe? Yeah, because it's just a main character who wakes up in a different body every single day, and sometimes it's male and sometimes it's female. I absolutely loved that aspect of it, because, again, maybe the soul, I'm going to say, falls in love with a girl and then meets her in different bodies, and she's really weirded out by it. So I really enjoyed that kind of aspect of it. So I was like, oh, I suppose that is a gender fluid main character right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. I think another important thing that people are talking about in regards to LGBTQ books is like letting them have happily ever after endings too, because for so long all the books about like gay kids have been like sad ones where like they die, or it'll be like 2 girls fall in love, but then one of them refuses to be with the other because she doesn't want to admit it, and like they never get happy endings. They're always like sad at the end. And a lot of authors who like are queer have talked about how like they for a long time felt like they couldn't have a happy ending because of books like that. They're like, oh, it's just not possible for someone like me to be happy. So like that's an important thing to remember. Like, and also there's the whole like gay characters always getting killed off in TV series and everything. So I saw someone tweet the other day about like if you only have one like queer character in your book, make sure you don't kill them off, because it's such a trope that happens all the time. They never get happy endings. So like something that you're to be aware of. Even if you're just going to have like a secondary character who's like gay or bi or trans, like let them live. Don't kill them.
Let them live.
It's like killing the only black person in your book. It's just
that is a topic I'll do it really, I haven't noticed that very much. I mean, I've noticed obvious issues with events like that, but I've never noticed any that have a bad ending.
I think now, like, people are getting, like, it's becoming more of a thing to write them with happy endings, but I think for a long time, there were, like, side characters who didn't get to be happy because of it.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Fell in love with someone who didn't love them, and...
Yeah.
Oh, there's another thing that maybe, I don't know how much of a topic everyone knows, but there's a big thing I want to say about androgyny, because that's another kind of topic about in the LGBT world, I guess, where some people, especially, because I'm in the fashion industry, there is a lot of girls that have very masculine features and men that have very feminine features, and they can kind of do sometimes crossover work. Like there's a very famous model, Andre is something, whose name I can't remember, but he does both male and female modeling, which is kind of cool. And there's one character from, where was it? After the Red Rain by Barry Lyga, and one of the main characters, when the girl first meets him, she thinks he's a girl because he's really pretty.
Yeah.
And like throughout the whole book, she's always mentioning like how pretty he is, but it's a guy. So I thought that was an interesting. It's a weird book. It was an okay book. It was a weird book. But that was an interesting idea. And I think I've really noticed it, especially since being in that industry, is beauty comes in all forms and shapes and sizes and standards. And I know now definitely I'm kind of looking at people different ways now and being like, oh, like you don't look, typically pretty, but you still have a really interesting face.
Interesting face.
Yeah.
We have another comment from Xander. He said, I kind of have 3 things to ask/say. One, as a homosexual male, I'm actually having difficulty writing as hetero males, and I'm afraid that I'll sound awkward. Kind of like how it can be so uncomfortable when it's blatantly obvious that a man is writing as a teenage girl. Help. And then 2, we'll go to that one first, I guess, because they're each kind of individual things. Does anyone have any advice for him? I don't know.
Research.
Yeah, research.
Yeah, I could say.
Kind of the same as we always say, but just like read a lot from that POV. Like just find a lot of books written by and about straight males, I guess, and see like
if
what
you can
type
find
of
a couple
tone and
straight
flavor
males
it
to hang
takes.
out with for a day or 2.
I'm
Just walk around with a notepad taking notes on what they do.
We're gonna be like,
I want to give advice, but I have never been a straight male, so I don't entirely know.
Yeah, I haven't been a straight male either. But yeah, I was mentioning how Audrey Colthurst was like tweeting about like, how do hetero people kiss? I need advice. Like, where do you put your hands? And like, so it's okay to like ask people questions.
Is it really that different?
Well, one of her big things is that she was like, do like girls put their hands on a guy's chest? Because for 2 girls, that's like, you don't do that on a first kiss.
that's actually true.
Very true.
That's very true.
Because it's mostly where do you put your hands? Like, the bodies are shaped differently.
I've been married for so long that now I'm like, how did you do it when you for the very first kiss? I'm like picturing them like awkwardly holding their hands out to the side like
a Superman flying.
Or like hands on the shoulder.
Like the awkward school dances when you're like in grade 10. Just at arm's length.
But yeah, definitely like find people that you can ask questions of and people who can like beta read it for you later and give you thoughts, because obviously not every hetero male is the same. But yeah, get some people who can look over it. Don't worry about it too much on the first draft. Second question he has is, what are your LGBTQ plus OTP? His are Solangelo, which I don't know who that is, and Malik.
It's oh my god, it's Nico Angelo and Will Solis from the Percy Jackson series. Yeah.
Oh
yeah,
I
spoilers.
love that you recognize that.
That's so familiar. I've never heard that before. And then I'm like, aha, I remember.
Yeah.
Yes,
So
totally
that
agree.
and
It's
Malik
pretty
are his
adorable.
OTPs.
They're pretty
Mine,
much a relationship. They don't even have that much of a relationship, and I love them so
Yeah.
much.
mine, spoiler alert for the Raven Boys, is Rose and Adam. Of course.
Mm-hmm.
They're wonderful. Their first choice is so great.
It's pretty great.
I have unauthorized ships, so like it's not official. I'm trying to think. Well, I've like always kind of secretly harbored the Harry Malfoy thing, like in my deepest.
You are not alone.
I was like, please. I was hoping that one of you guys would say that. I was like, I cannot go on the internet saying this if no one else agrees with me.
And it might be from Carry On. That might be why I'm like now rereading the Harry Potter series. Like, huh. Here would be a really good spot for them to. Okay.
I saw someone mentioning on Tumblr, I think, the other day about how like Harry obviously has a crush on Cedric Diggory, and I was like, I ship it. Or just ship. As Aaron's husband would say, ship.
It was more of like a shout while pointing. That's not how it works.
I was reading online today how a lot of people don't know what that means in the fanfiction world, so people just think we were walking around talking like pirates.
Ready,
Shipping all the time.
Ship and canon. And
Yeah, canon and ship
yeah.
and everything.
Why is it all pirate themed? What is that?
I taught my mom those words. So like when we watch TV together or something, she was like, I ship it. I'm like, whoa.
That's awesome.
That's
I just had to teach my mom throwing shade because she she kind of knew what it was, but it was really funny because we're in the car and she goes, and we were like driving in the car and we were gonna park and she goes, oh look, it's shade, like got shade, and I'm like, Mom, what are you doing? And she's like, is that how you say it? Like you say like got shade? I'm like, oh my god, no. That's not what that means. I was like, you mean like, and she's like, like that? I'm like, kind of. Actually not.
Moms are great.
So good. I'm gonna be like that embarrassing parent someday. Life goals.
Okay, so Xander also his third question is, I'm actually writing a story where a guy is the reincarnation of a woman, and he has to deal with his emotions for a reincarnated husband, now a girl, and the man that he was having the affair with in his past life as a woman. Thoughts? That is complicated.
Ooh,
Oh,
that's
my
complicated.
brain.
I want to read it.
I want to read
Trying
it.
to understand this.
Ooh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
What was the question?
It's just if we have thoughts on that, which is, wow, that's complicated and
Yeah.
interesting, definitely.
My thoughts on that are just.
Yeah.
I think you would have to think about internal versus external, and then you'd also have to think about the internal gender dealing with the fact that they are now another gender and acting how society thinks they should act as that other gender.
Well, and then there's also that conflict of like you emotionally have feelings for this one person maybe, but then like your body has a physical reaction towards this other person. You know, like I mean, this is a cheesy, not the greatest book in the world example, but I kind of love The Host for that. And how like she,
yes.
you know, like,
Example,
she emotionally is falling for one person, but her body still has this like response to this other guy, and that conflict.
Maybe you want to make one character the same gender on the inside and out just to like calm things down a little bit. If that works for your story.
I think it's also important to remember when you switch genders, because I know this happens to a lot of trans women, men that have transitioned to women, is that they've discovered suddenly people are taking them less seriously at work. People are interrupting them. People are not putting as much weight behind what they're saying, both offline and online. You know, as a woman, the world is very different than, you know, walking through everyday life is very different than when you're a man. It's a completely different experience. That's one of my favorite things to point to, actually, when people try to say stuff like sexism doesn't exist. So, like, just look at, you know, a couple of blog posts from men that used to be men that are now women, and the changes that are happening at work. Like, you know, people aren't listening to me anymore. You know, when I was Bob, that my idea was great. You know, now that I'm Karen, no one's listening to my idea, and you know, they're voicing it off, or like turning to, you know, my brother or whatever, you know.
Right.
So that's something to definitely take into consideration if somebody is like switched or being incarnated as a different gender. Also, like, it's interesting to read from the point of view of women that have transitioned to men, and how they say, like, articles I read saying that, like, oh, you know, now that I'm a man, apparently things my sense of humor is now considered funny by a lot of people.
Oh.
Like, I'm now funny, whereas people just used to, like, roll their eyes at me, or, like, I'm now, like, assertive and powerful, whereas people used to call me strident or, like, shrill, you know.
Bossy.
Bossy, yeah. Bitchy.
Bossy. I
Like,
hate
very
that,
big
hate that word.
Same person, different reactions people are having to them.
Mm-hmm.
Which is very interesting. I could read a whole book about that, seriously, just the difference they experience afterwards.
Yeah,
I find that
definitely.
so interesting.
Yeah.
Also, that reminded me of another gap in representation. We've talked about like things that aren't represented as often. Usually, when there is a trans character, which there already aren't enough of those, but when there is one, it's almost always male to female. There aren't many female to male, and like I know someone who's female to male, so they exist, but they're not represented very often, like in TV or books or anything.
Especially in media with, like, Caitlyn Jenner and everything, it's always the man transitioning to a woman for some reason.
That's true.
It seems like.
There is a book, I mentioned it earlier, I kind of forgot because it's Beautiful Music for Ugly Children, and the main character is a lesbian, but she does I think she does try and transition within the book because her name's Elizabeth, but she's more comfortable with people calling her Gabe. And at one point she does try and do not through surgery, but she just try and do body modifications, like she wears clothing differently and like puts
Binder.
on puts on a binder and like orders some kind of orders something to like help her pee differently. I remember that one was like a big thing for her. She was so excited, and that was like halfway through the book, I think. So she tries to do that, and there's some issues in there too because he falls in love with a girl, and at one point, I think they go after there's a crash or something, so they ask them out, and the girl shows up at the cafe or something and looks at him and she's like, I really swear I've seen you around somewhere before. And this is when the main character is dressed as a guy. And she realizes that she saw him at school as a girl and she like freaks out and does not want to be there anymore. But then on the other hand, it's finding some other people that will accept the change, and the neighbor ends up being a really awesome person who's like, I don't know, like an 80-year-old guy. Like he's like this really cool person, like ends up being his mentor or whatever. It's a great book. It's about a radio station. It's pretty good. You guys should check it out. But that's really the only one I've ever heard. Again? Beautiful Music for Ugly Children.
Such a weird title.
Yeah.
It's what they call the radio station.
That's cool.
It's a pretty good. It's pretty short, so it's a fast read. But that's the only one that I've ever seen that has any kind of female to male transition in it.
Mm-hmm. I definitely, because I was watching this like program when I was in Orlando. Like that's what when we weren't at the Universal theme park, we were like chilling in the hotel, like watching trashy TV because I don't have cable, so that's what I get to do on vacation. And MTV actually had a really cool show on that was like about queer people, not I don't believe transitioning like through surgery and everything, but it was about like a girl that wanted to be called a male name and male pronouns, and he had ordered like a binder online and like was really excited when it came, and like I don't know, it was really cool watching this show, and I'm like, I've never seen a show like this before. No one talks about it. It's just really cool to get like a peek into that person's life and what they're going through and like how they're dealing with trying to get their parents to call him by the name he prefers and the pronouns he prefers, and like hearing the parents constantly slip up and how frustrating that is. And then like it followed a couple different people as they're going through this type of thing, and like commonly the males that are dressing and asking for pronouns as female, their fathers are very standoffish about it. Like the dad is having a hard time with it, and like so I don't know. It's just very interesting. I don't even remember what the show's name is, which is annoying. So I have to look it up and like try to find it online or something again. But it's a good
Well,
one.
that's probably why the LGBTQ community on YouTube is so popular, because you see, like in Vancouver, there's a local one that's named Princess Jules. Her name's Julie, and then there's of course Gigi Gorgeous, and there's this other girl named Maya that I wear. That's creepy. That I follow. That came away wrong.
I want to wear you like okay.
No. Sorry.
Keep that for after the chat. Okay.
Starts with a W. Watch. And I think that's why they're so popular, is because it's not really talked about, even though it's known. I think that's kind of the thing. So of course they're really popular because people want to know what it's like. They want to know how it happens and what it's like afterward, and stories about transitioning or what have you. So I think it's really brave of those people to share that, and I think I want to know. Like it's not like a thing where I'm looking at them in disdain. It's just I'm curious, just because that's not something that we really talk about. But I think it should be, though. It should be more well known.
Yeah. I also think it's interesting. One of the things that's interesting about the fact that we don't have a lot of female to male characters in YA fiction is that we do have a lot of girls dressing as boys. Like that happens all the time in historical fiction and also sometimes in fantasy. But we never get trans characters. Like it's always just like girl dresses as a boy, but then at the end just goes back to being a girl. Like I think it would be interesting to see like one of those characters decide, you know what, I like being this way. Like I'm just gonna
That
stick
would
with
be
it.
cool.
I didn't even think of that. That's so true. That's like every single book.
Yeah.
Trying to be a guy so she can just swing through there, go to dark.
Cross through the Oregon Trail and
Exactly.
I mean, how cool would it have been if Mulan decided to stay a guy? Like, that would have just been awesome.
and be with Shang, like all of
Right.
that. And he's cool with it too.
Yeah, of course, right? 'Cause you gotta be.
Yeah.
That would have just made Mulan like 1,000
Mulan
times
fan
better.
fiction time.
Right.
Definitely.
I got the wheels turning. So maybe something will happen
So many
eventually.
story ideas.
So many.
All the story ideas. Are there any more questions in the comments?
Just people talking about their favorite OTPs. Solangelo and Malik are popular. And apparently, a lesbian couple done well in fantasy is in the Sword of Truth series. So.
Oh, okay.
Really?
I've heard of those.
Okay.
There you go.
Sword of Truth?
Yeah. I haven't gotten super far into it, so when I continue, I'll let you know.
I was gonna say I read like a lot of those books, but it must be quite far into the series then.
Yeah.
I'm gonna think.
It must be. I mean, there's like 12
Yeah,
books
'cause I
in that
never-
series, so.
Yeah.
Also, I can
I
recommend.
think I read like the first 5 or 6, and they're so thick.
if you want like sexuality and relationships that are like very not traditional and standard, I would recommend Serafina, even though it doesn't happen until the end of the second book, and I don't want to say like who it is or anything because it is kind of a spoiler at the end, but there is kind of this very like unconventional relationship at the end of the duology.
There
It has
is.
some interesting like sexuality elements to it. So
Now I want to read the second one. I didn't really like the first one. So I know everyone's going on how amazing this thing is, and I'm like, so maybe I should reread it because apparently I'm missing out on everything. So now I want to read the second one, so maybe I'll have to read the first one.
yeah,
I've never read Serafina. Maybe I should give it a read now.
I like it.
Dragons and politics. That's all I remember from it.
That's basically what it is, dragons and politics. And
that
music.
That was the other thing I just kind of like remembered. Something that, and I mean, I really like reading these kind of books, so this kind of pertains to it. But the whole idea of fairies and lots of other fantasy characters not preferring a certain gender is a big thing. And I mean, like, I read, dark fairy tales are my favorite thing to read ever. So you do read a lot about the fairies and the fairy courts and all that jazz, and it's like a well-known like thing about fairies that like they don't really have like they'll go after anything that walks kind of thing. So I like that aspect of a lot of the courts. That I think it was at one point. Oh god, I think okay, I'm going to reference to the Mortal Instruments again, because I'm pretty sure this is what book this is from. But they go to that party of Magnus's, and then there's Alec and is saying that there's like this fairy that like he pinched me in a highly or so that, and he's like, well, I think Simon says something like, well, if he's interested in yours, he's not going to be interested in your sister's. And then Magnus is like, oh, it's okay, he's a fairy, they're not particular. That happens a lot in, I want to say, A Court of Thorns and Roses. There's also a little bit of crossover in there, and in a lot of Holly Black's books too. I'm pretty sure Tithe, whatever the heck it's called.
I guess Tithe.
I did this in my pronunciations video. I still can't say the damn thing. But there's a big crossover in there with multiple genders just being like, well, we're in fairyland, so let's just do whatever. So I guess that's a representation of bi characters or pansexuals. So what basically I'm saying is that if you're pansexual, you're a fairy.
We left Erin. She has the control over the chat.
She disappeared. I think. So past just like in YA, like, what do you think of like representation of LGBT in like TV shows and movies as well? Let's broaden our horizons.
Well, I do not watch a lot of TV, so my response is going to be very limited.
I mean, in general, in like all forms of media, there's a ton of room for growth. Like I was talking about earlier, in TV, there's a lot of like lesbian characters and bi characters being killed off.
Yeah.
There was the whole like controversy over the 100, which I don't watch, but
no,
like,
I don't want to talk
part
about
of the
it.
reason it was such a controversy is because it happens so often.
Yeah.
What happens so often?
Oh, like lesbian and bi women being killed off in TV shows.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
She
Don't
mentioned
start me
the
on the
100,
100.
and my heart
100
broke.
so mad. So angry.
Desiree's not ready to talk about it yet.
I'm not. Like, literally, as soon as he said the 100, like, my eyes, like, watered. I'm like, no, stop.
It gets a lot of people really upset.
I'm gonna have to start watching this.
You should. I just made me and my
it's
mom
such a
start
good
watching
show.
it yesterday, and we're almost done with season 1.
Oh, nice.
So good. But Lexa, I'm so mad about it.
I can't talk about it. Man.
That was actually something I found not even just like maddening on like one level, but multiple levels.
Yeah.
The fact that they had that representation, they killed. Well, sorry, spoiler.
Spoiler, yeah.
I think everyone knows.
And they no longer do. I mean, come on.
I mean, I feel like Clark is the perfect representation of, like, a bisexual character in a sci-fi. Like, it's great. I love it. I love Clark. She's one of my favorite characters ever. Even though she's very annoying sometimes.
I do like her. Something to talk about, I think, would be LGBT, like, writers writing, or not LGBT writers, but just writers of all kinds writing LGBT and stereotypes to avoid.
Well, yeah, definitely if you're going to be writing, just like if you're writing like a race or an ethnicity that isn't yours, like if you're writing a sexuality or an identity that isn't yours, like research it and look for people that are of that sexuality or identity, because yeah, there's a ton of stereotypes. Like there's a whole like bi people are just like really like
Going around making out with everyone.
Yeah, they're making out with everybody. They're really promiscuous, and they can never stay faithful to one person for long. Like that's a terrible stereotype.
Yeah, definitely.
Worst stereotype.
Yeah.
And it's so ridiculous.
Yes, and like dancing, which I'm like,
Yeah.
It's
again,
a really
I don't-
ridiculous stereotype, like that. Oh, you can't be in a relationship and be faithful because you're like what?
Attracted to both. Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
How does
Yeah.
that make sense? Logic?
Or
Not
like
Or
if you we're probably gonna say the same thing. If you get into a permanent relationship, then you're no longer bi. You're either like straight or gay.
I was gonna say that.
Yeah.
Or like if you identify as bisexual and then you are with someone of the opposite gender, it's like, oh, you were just going through a phase.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely.
I don't know what that means.
Yeah.
That's a very common thing that comes up.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well,
So,
even
if you're
in
writing
the-
a bisexual character, just don't make them the promiscuous character too. Like, it's just not a good idea.
Yeah, I get some backlash on that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I know for bisexual people, it's hard because even in the gay community, there's a tendency to not feel fully at home there and not feel fully at home in like the straight world because, you know, for a lot of people, there's even some, you know, I don't know how to say it, like not backlash, but like, oh, are you sure you're bisexual or are you just doing it for attention? Like,
Yeah.
Mhm.
Just oh,
I've even heard the term.
you need to pick. Like they're always like, pick one. You can't have both. You have to pick one. Either you're gay or you're not. And that's from
Why?
the community.
Yeah.
That's
Like,
from
even
the
heard the term,
heterosexual
like,
community.
Like there's even the term like barsexual, people that are not bisexual but they're just like girls, obviously mostly making out in a bar to impress
Oh,
people,
yeah.
you know, stuff like that. Like,
No.
so that makes things harder for actual bisexual people.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I'm just
I know. Oh,
there's oh, sorry.
I was going on to a different stereotype with a different
Okay.
identity. So.
There was a female comedian that did a small thing about sexuality and the whole thing about how she made the joke about like how every girl when they're drunk turns into a little bit of a lesbian, like free samples at Costco, like you usually wouldn't buy it, but if there's a free sample you'll go get it, you know what I mean? Just like that is terrible, but then also slightly true because I know a lot of people that do that. But then again, it's just the whole idea that like girls are pretty, we smell nice, we're soft, like why not? And it's a whole thing about like girls with like girl crushes and stuff. How you see a girl, you're like, damn, like I'm straight, but that is a very nice, you know, you are a very nice person. It's like,
Girls are soft. They smell nice.
That always comes back to what I like. Always go back to like sexuality is pretty fluid. Like, of course,
It's a
it varies
spectrum.
for each. It varies. Yeah, it varies for each person. Like everybody's an individual shiny snowflake. It's a little bit different, but and you know, and then of course there's also, you know, people that are stopped, you know, from being as fluid as maybe they could be if they've been raised differently because of sets of rules or beliefs or like phobias. And but I really do believe that to a certain degree it's fluid and that there's nothing wrong with that.
There are a few female YA authors on Twitter who have talked about how like they're adults and they're like married to men and have children, but like as adults they realize that they were definitely bisexual their whole lives, but like they were raised in such a way and had such a like cultural like standard put on them that you were probably straight. There was a small chance you could be lesbian, but that's it. And so they're like, oh, I like this guy and I like being with this guy, so I guess I'm straight. And a few of them have talked about how they always thought it was just normal to feel the way they did about girls. And then they like got older and they were like, oh, I think I'm actually bisexual. Not everyone feels this way.
It's really, you know, and it can be easy to try to stamp down feelings for, you know, one side of things. Like, oh, okay, you're not supposed to be feeling this way. Just concentrate on dating guys or dating girls or.
Yeah. Anyway, what I was going to say about another stereotype is I know that people have talked a little bit in like the writing world with like trans characters, something that gets said a lot about trans characters that isn't always necessarily true, and it's been used too much as a trope, is the whole like they're a guy in a girl's body or a girl in a guy's body. Like I know a lot of trans readers are tired of reading that because apparently that's not everyone's experience, it's not how everyone feels. And also, it's just been used with like every trans character. So.
And I know there's a very stereotypical flamboyant guy and the butchy girl, which is again, you know, it exists.
Yeah.
It's there for a reason, but it's not shouldn't necessarily be your go-to. And if it, even if you have a woman who's a lesbian and more masculine, she should have a lot more depth than just the butch lesbian.
Right.
There should be a little more to it. Mm-hmm.
And then there's the whole homosexual couple where one's the guy and one's the girl. Like, that's not how most people's relationships work.
I know that's a very large thing.
I hate that. Like,
So angry, like at people asking, like, "Oh, who's the guy in the relationship?" And I'm like, that's stupid.
like
they're
Did you not notice that there are lesbians and there are no men in a relationship?
It's like I've known people who kind of have that dynamic. Like I know a couple that when they got married, like one of the women wore like pants and the other woman wore a wedding dress. Like they have that kind of dynamic, but not every couple does. Like some of them are, like they're both girly or they're both really masculine or like.
Well, actually, I know a couple that they're two bi girls, and they got into a relationship, and they're both really great people, and they're so sweet and so happy that they end up getting together. They're both super girly, and I ship them so hard. They're just like they're super adorable together, and yeah, they're both like really girly and chatty and fun, and it's not like it's just them. It's not like, oh, that one wears pants all the time and wears like that. It's just like they're two people.
What it comes down to is like people still trying to shove people into boxes.
Yeah.
Like they still want to be like, well, you're the man in the relationship and you're the woman. Well, no, like we don't need neat little boxes. Just be who you are.
Aaron,
I don't need a box.
Just,
I'm fine being in a circle.
Aaron, are you eating red vines?
No, that's just licorice.
No.
I don't know what a red vine is.
They're licorice.
Licorice. Oh, well.
It's a brand of
Twizzlers.
licorice.
Nibs.
Oh,
Nib
want
licorice.
it, I want
You
it.
can come over and have one.
Yay!
Try to feed it to you from here.
Put my face really close to the camera.
Yes, that's when I quickly ran out of the room because I was like, I have licorice. I just remembered that. It was emergency.
I also like how we were originally talking about LGBT and YA, and we just got into this whole political debate.
I knew that was gonna happen.
And now licorice.
And licorice.
Especially the licorice. That's the
Licorice.
All right. Now that we're obviously on to more important topics, do we want to wrap us up soon? Any last thoughts? We're reaching an hour here.
My last thought is that this is a very awesome topic that can go on forever and ever and ever and keeps branching and spiraling. But alas, we do not have forever and ever. And I am glad that we could all have this wonderful conversation and all be awesome people and talk about it like adults.
I want to say the final thought, like I think lots of like good thoughts have been shared this whole time, but like definitely if this is something you want to know more about or you're like writing a character who is LGBTQ+, like go search out people who actually are the identity of the character you're writing. Because like I can talk all day about like stereotypes and things you should and shouldn't do, but when it comes down to it, like I'm very straight, so like don't just listen to my advice. Go like find people who it's their experience and listen to them. Make sure you listen a lot.
Well said.
Good note to close on.
Yeah.
All right, ladies. Everyone say bye.
Bye.
Bye.